Hey Joe, how's it going, man? Thank you for being on the pod today.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Yeah, life's pretty good over here.
To everyone else, welcome to another episode of Adaptive. If I sound a little funny, I'm sick, just to let you know. But yeah, let's do this and dive in. So today we're gonna focus on adaptive traveling, specifically van life. So yeah, first of all, Joe, do you think you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you towards adapting a van for four-wheel adventures?
I can take it all the way back if we wanted to my late teens. I mean, it's always been like outdoor adventure and that sort of thing's always been a huge part of my life. And in those early days, there was people that I looked up to that had figured out how to live cheaply on the road and be 100% dedicated to the craft, whatever that was, climbing, paragliding, what have you. And that was always really inspiring to me to want to live a life that was dedicated to my passions. And I sustained a spinal cord injury at 25, so I was kind of working towards that from like 20 to 25, getting close to that point. I had my first kind of living out of the truck experience when I moved out to Montana when I was 23. So I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. So it's kind of like, the point to what I'm saying is like, it's just been a slow buildup over time of living on the road and traveling long, like having longer travels on the road and that sort of thing. But after my injury, to be honest, I thought all that was kind of over. And it was about 3, maybe 4 or 5 years after my spinal cord injury, which I sustained through paragliding back in 2010, that I kind of started to see the light again and was like, oh my gosh, I might be able to actually like get out and do small little pushes, like living out of my rig. So I had a Subaru at the time. I was relearning how to paraglide with the wheels, and that opened up this opportunity to go down to Salt Lake City, Utah and camp and live right where I was learning to fly. And I was doing that like 10-day stretches at a time. And that gave me an opportunity to really learn like, well, where am I going to go to the bathroom, or how am I going to carry enough water or food and cook and live as much out of the rig as possible and try to stay out of restaurants as much as possible. Like really try to do it what I considered the right way. And yeah, that as that grew, I eventually got this little 5x10 camper that I towed behind a truck that I had. And so I went from a little tiny Subaru sleeping in the back of it. Like every night I'd have to move all my wheelchair stuff like up to the front seat, and then I'd hop onto the center console and then scoot into the back of the Subaru, and I'd lay out my bed and all of that, and was sleeping. I did quite a few travels that way. Eventually got this little camper, and I had one really big trip that was like my big eye opener. And I had to go down to San Jose, California to do a speaking engagement at a school. And so I decided to pull my trailer all the way down there and then do this kind of road trip up Highway 1 along the coast and then make my way back to Montana. That's where I was living at the time. And that whole trip, that was my first time like going somewhere where I didn't really know anybody, needing to deal with it all 100% on my own, needing to like problem solve and unhook and hook up the trailer and all that kind of stuff. Like it really was the first like totally independent, totally solo road trip that I had done at that point. And dude, I just got done with that one and my mind was just completely opened up. And I was like, oh my God, I can live that lifestyle that I dreamed of when I was like 20 years old. Like I can still do that. And then, yeah, so then I did a series of like longer 2-week, 3-week trips and was spending quite a bit of time on the road throughout the year because they were kind of scattered throughout the year for whether it was work or play. And eventually I just hit a moment where I was able to actually like throw everything into a storage unit and hit the road it was really funny. The original goal was to do it for a year. And that seemed really challenging at the time. Like as a C7 quadriplegic, could I live on the road out of this little 5x10 camper that has no running water, no heat, nothing. Can I do that for a year? And can I manage everything independently? And I got like 6 months into it. And I'll be completely honest, I was like exhausted. I was like, just the day-to-day maintenance and going and doing laundry and grocery shopping. And I was living out of a cooler for all my food. So replenishing ice and all that. Like, it was just tiring on top of trying to paraglide and trying to chase my dreams. And yeah, I was like, man, I don't know if I can make it a year. And it was like shortly after that, like I found a rhythm and I found a way to like do all of this and take the bad weather days to maintain all of my, maintain everything, all the daily living kind of stuff. And yeah, that ended up going well past a year. I lived on the road for 2 years in this little 5x10 camper. And then eventually I met my now wife, and the little camper was too small. We spent COVID in that for like 3 months living on BLM land. And she was basically like, this thing's cool, but it's way too small. So sold the truck, sold the camper, bought a van, ran ProMaster, and started building that out. And that I mean, that's like the quickest way that I can say how I went from, you know, never living on the road or traveling in that way and figuring out how to do it as a wheelchair user. It was quite the experience, but it was an evolution. It definitely didn't happen overnight.
No, that's awesome. And that leads me into the next question. So you went from Subaru to camper, and then you got a van. And I was watching a video on your Instagram, and it was of you getting out of your bed down onto like a shelf onto the floor, and you're kind of talking about how you were laying out your camper to like get out of bed.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I guess what I want to ask is, can you tell us about like your first 3 modifications that you made within like the first 3 months, and were they like really clear modifications that you thought, hey, like this is exactly what I need to make this more adaptable, more, you know, easily accessible?
Yeah. I mean, so when I got the van, you know, that was the first thing that was like, I need to build it out. I need to design it. I need to like figure out how I can do this stuff independently. And so the idea was, well, let's just start really simple. And then granted, there was also a bit of a timeline or a rush on it because my wife and I were living in my little 5x10 camper. It was like a teardrop style camper. You couldn't even stand up in it if you wanted to. And when COVID hit, we spent 3 months in that, living on public land around the West here, Arizona mostly. And when we made the transition to the van, we were still living on the road. And she had just graduated college and got her physical therapy degree. And we were moving towards that, but we didn't know where we were going to live. We didn't know where we were going to go, where the job was going to be next, that sort of thing. So when we got the van, it was like, well, we have to do something first. So we need a floor in it, because without the floor, I couldn't really roll around with my wheelchair because it's like bumpy on the floor. Otherwise, the bed of a truck or something. And so we need to put a floor down. We need some insulation on the floor, and I need a bed. That's the first thing. But I need to be able to fit my equipment, like hand cycles, flying gear, that sort of thing, underneath the bed. So the bed's got to be up pretty high. And okay, well, how am I going to get on the bed? And I'm kind of a sucker for trying to do things as simple as possible. So there's all kinds of solutions out there that you could get really complicated with electronics and lifts and all kinds of stuff to help you get up into the bed. But for me, I was like, I think if I built this box that from the back end of the van, it's hollowed out, so I could actually put my hand cycle, like the front wheel of my hand cycle, up into it, so that it would extend it up to the front, but cover it up so you didn't have just wheels and stuff all over the place. We're in the living area of the van. But I was like, if I build that, it creates some storage from the back end for some of the equipment, but also gives me a halfway point to go from my wheelchair to the box, then from the box up onto the bed. And that was, there was a little bit of a guessing game there, and I had to just kind of think back in my experience on how high can I transfer so I could make the box, kind of maxing that out, and then make the bed from there as high as it can go to give me as much room underneath it, essentially. So my thought process there was, I have a ton of outdoor gear that needs a place in this van. That's going to have to be under the bed, meaning the bed's got to be high. So now I got to problem solve how I'm going to get on the bed. That box was the answer. And that video you were referencing, yeah, I mean, we built it. The bed was in. It was all installed, and there was a lot of unknowns. And we got it all set up and tried it, and it worked. And I was like, sweet. But that came with, the nice thing about that was I've had the van for 5 or 6 years. So I was like 10 years out from my spinal cord injury at that point. So I had a pretty good idea of what I was capable of with transfers and that kind of thing. So it wasn't like I was a year out from my injury, still learning how to be independent. I was totally independent and living life at that point, and things felt really normal. And so I had an idea of what I needed to do. So yeah, I mean, the first things was the floor, because the wheels got to move around. I got to be able to be in my wheelchair in the van and move around and be functional. Hand controls in the van, I pulled them out of my truck and we had to reinstall them in the van, and that was a whole project. I mean, that took us an entire day to get things figured out because it wasn't quite the right set of hand controls for my van, but we made it work. The transfer box up onto the bed, that was massive, and figuring out the heights and all that to where I could then have a full-size mattress on top, because I got to worry about pressure sores and that sort of thing while I'm traveling, and I want a good mattress, but enough room underneath to fit my equipment. And so the rest of the layout was super basic. There really wasn't anything else, and I did that kind of by one, because we were in a hurry. We needed something because we were living out of it. But also, I don't really know. I've never really built out a van. I don't really know what I need. So let's keep it really simple right now. And as we go, we'll slowly build and make things a little more convenient once we know what we need and where we want it.
You've had the van now, the same van for what, 5 years?
Yeah.
So how is that build in under 60 square feet evolved?
I wish I could say it's evolved a ton, but it really hasn't.
Okay, so it's still simple.
It's still really simple, and a few reasons for that. One, we kind of realized, because the original idea was we're going to build this thing out into like what everyone sees on Instagram as far as vans go. Totally built out and have a sink with some running water and, all the things, all the bells and whistles, make it a tiny little home. And as we used it, and as we were like moving and stuff like that, like we moved from Missoula, Montana down to Jackson, Wyoming, we had to put a lot of stuff in the van. And it gave us this opportunity to have freedom of this massive space inside this van to be able to load stuff into it and be able to kind of make the van whatever we needed it to be at whatever time. So there were times where we had, like one time I drove down to Sea Otter Classic in California. It's a bike festival. And I brought back some hand cycles and took some stuff down there. I brought back, I think I had 4 hand cycles inside the van. One of which was like, I had to sleep with it on my bed. I had to take it apart and put it on the bed for half the bed. But it was like, if I had the whole van built out, there's no way I could have hauled all that stuff back. So we ended up keeping it really simple. In the end, we put walls up, we put a ceiling on, we put insulation around everything. We made it a little bit warmer, a little quieter for driving. Put a refrigerator in there. That made life really easy versus living out of a cooler. Now I got solar on top, so that helps keep the batteries full so I can keep the refrigerator running. Like I don't really have like a ton of stuff going on the inside of it. Part of it is just if I could go back, or maybe not if I could go back. When I get the next van and I need to build it out, there will be more of a plan, because now I kind of know what I want in there and what I want to do. The challenge with it is when you don't know anything of what you really want out of something like that, you're going to mess it up. Mm-hmm. Like the first van's always going to be trial and error. You're never going to get it totally right. And so the next van, yeah, it'll be planned out better. Like I'll do all the wiring for lights, outlets, batteries, all that stuff first. Then we'll insulate. Then we'll do the walls. And then I'll build it properly in the proper stages. Doing it the way that I did it, we put the walls up and all that. Well, it's pretty hard to go backwards and do all the wiring and stuff like that. So now the van's got so many miles on it. It's got almost 150,000 miles on it. So it's like, do I really want to invest a bunch into this, or just keep running it until I'm ready to get a new one? I'm kind of let's just keep running until I'm ready to get a new one. We're doing little things. Like I just put a wheelchair lift in it that was gifted to me, which was really amazing. I'll probably put some cabinets in there, make things a little bit more organized. Still just little tiny things, but at this point, at 150,000 miles, I'm not concerned about the van anymore. I'm just like, let's just make it work. It works for now. It's great. When I get a new one, I'll build it out properly. But it allows me to get out. Like I just spent a month on the road in Southern California in Salt Lake City. It allows me to go do that, camp in it, have all my gear in there, have food, plenty of space for my dog and my wife, and we can get out and go have fun. So it's kind of perfect, but it's super simple.
That's awesome, because it's really easy to get caught up in the allure of what everyone else is doing, on Instagram and Facebook, and what their vans look like, and these really fancy setups. I remember when I drove down to the Baja, I took my truck down there, and I easily got caught up in all the shiny, gadgets and equipment and all the stuff that would, in my mind, make a long adventure even better. But I soon realized that having a simple setup was easier for my mental and physical health.
I can't agree with you any more on that. I mean, the more complicated you make it, it might seem more convenient, but it's also more things that can go wrong. You could have water leaks, you could have power things go wrong, you could have all kinds of stuff. And so that was kind of also part of my thought. Well, let's keep it really, after we got past the let's build this super fancy van, we are like, let's keep it really simple. It was like, well, nothing can really go wrong except like mechanically with the van, like that kind of stuff. But that doesn't matter what you have. That's going to be a risk anytime, the engine or transmission or something like that. But yeah, keeping it simple, but it also made it to where I feel like most of the modern conveniences that go on with vans or campers and that kind of stuff, they're not always like super accessible for people with disabilities. So for me, like my camper being super simple and just having, basically I had lights in it, that was about it as far as electricity, and doing all the transfers manually and all of that. Like one, it was like less things that can break that I have to worry about, but two, it was like I can manage that on my own really well. And so, yeah, it's just like keeping things simple and more manual seemed to be, for me, what worked best to be able to do it independently. Now adding in like my wheelchair lift that I just got, I mean, that's huge. That's been like, after 5 years of transferring onto the floor, like the downside to my design is just way more work, right? And so before I had the wheelchair lift in it, if I was like, let's say hanging out around a campfire, and it's time to go to bed, I'd have to wheel over to the van, transfer from my wheelchair to the floor of the van from the side door, pull my wheelchair up in, then scoot in between the passenger and driver's seat, pull my wheelchair closer to me, then transfer up, do like a tricep dip, like up into the driver's seat, get my wheelchair again, get it all the way butted up against the back of the driver's seat, turn my body, transfer to my wheelchair, get my feet onto the wheelchair, turn around, go over to the transfer box that I had that we talked about earlier, then transfer onto the transfer box, get my feet and everything up onto that, then transfer from that onto the bed, and then get everything, and then get settled into bed, right? And because I don't have like a lot of cabinets and stuff, I've got like a duffel bag with some clothes and stuff like that, so you got to move some things around, and yeah, so it's a lot. So like, if it was like 11 o'clock at night, it's like, oh God, I'm tired, I want to go to bed. I'd be sometimes sitting on the outside of the van thinking about all of that work that I have to do to get up on the bed, and be like, man, this is exhausting. This is kind of the last thing I want to do. Now with the wheelchair lift, I skip half of that. So hook into the lift, pulls me up into the van. Then I just go from my wheelchair. I'm already in my wheelchair, so I just go from my wheelchair to the transfer box up onto the bed. So yeah, I'm trying to find some ways to make some of the stuff easier in life, like save some of the work on my shoulders and not make it so challenging. But in that lift, I'll be able to move to the next van, which is sweet. So now that I have it, it's like the next van, I can really do it right and make things a little bit more convenient, a little bit better organized, a little less shuffling around of things on the inside of the van on the day-to-day.
Have you thought about pulling a small cargo trailer behind the van for your equipment? Because then you could have a lower bed in the van. I know it just adds another, piece of equipment to the puzzle, but
Yeah, I have zero issues pulling a trailer. I actually kind of like pulling. I mean, I lived on the road for 2 years pulling a camper behind my truck. Like I don't have any problem with that at all. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm a bit limited in my travels on what I can bring. Like I can't bring all of my gear because there's not enough room for it. And when Caitlin's with me, like her and I, like she's got her bikes, her mountain bikes, her gravel bikes, whatever. And so just then it's like if it's just me and my dog, then we're super cozy and I got most of my gear with me. But if it's Caitlin and me traveling around with the dog, yeah, it fills up really quick. And so then you get more limited. Like I can't really bring my flying gear and or my adaptive mountain bike if Caitlin's with me. I have to pick or choose one or the other. And we mountain bike a lot together. So it's bring the mountain bike and leave the flying gear behind. So trailer's next on the list because I got some other gear, like a paramotor is something I really want to like make happen here in the near future. But I'm gonna need a place to store that. I can't go in the van.
What is a paramotor?
It's another form of paragliding just with a motor, and you got a big fan and a trike, and you can take off from flat ground. You don't have to be on mountains, and yeah, it just opens up another door for flying around. But that's even bigger equipment, right? So that's where it's like, okay, we kind of need a trailer. And then the trailer would make it easier too, because then you could have everything really well organized inside the trailer instead of just stuffing in every corner of underneath the bed of all the gear. Because it's like, you got your adaptive, like let's say you got if I'm traveling alone, I've got my adaptive mountain bike and I've got my adaptive flying equipment for paragliding. Well, just that is not that much stuff, but you got to think about all the tools you need, all the spare parts you got to have, all the other things. Like I got a whole kit for in case the van breaks down, if the battery dies, if I got to get towed out of something, if I get stuck, that's a whole kit in itself just to help out if I run into some issues out on the road. And a number of other different things that are under there, plus all the daily living stuff in the front area of the van. And it just fills up really quickly. I don't really have any interest in lowering the bed though, to be completely honest. Like I don't mind the work to get up on top of the bed because when I don't have a trailer, like how I am right now, it's really nice to have everything in the van and tucked away, not on like a bike rack on the outside of the van or anything like that. So like for work, for the trail consulting work that I do on public land, I'll be traveling with just my adaptive mountain bike. I'm not going to want to pull a trailer for that, just for the adaptive mountain bike. So if I can throw that underneath the bed and have everything because then everything's really well organized because I just have an adaptive mountain bike and not any other equipment. Yeah, it's really nice to just be like totally contained. So then when I pull over or if I park somewhere to sleep or park somewhere and leave the van for a while, I'm not worried about somebody stealing my bike or, getting into my equipment in any way, unless they totally break into the van, but that's a lot harder.
So you were talking about having tools, equipment for when things break down. That's actually something I really want to lean into for a moment because, being a person also with a disability, when I did my long road trip down to the Baja, I was very naive to what kind of breakdowns could happen. And my mindset was, well, hopefully nothing is going to happen. And if it does, I'll figure it out at the time. But like for myself, I was really stressed out about getting a flat tire and not being able to change the tire by myself. So how do you deal with any kind of anxiety when you're traveling and having any major breakdowns? And do you have systems in place for if you do have like a major breakdown?
Yeah, I mean that's like this is the part of like van life, whether you're in a camper or a van, truck, Subaru, doesn't matter. Just that idea of like living on the road or doing long road trips and living out of your rig. It comes with some anxiety there because if things break down, like if your van breaks down, that's your home. And if that's going to take a week to fix, like if they got to order parts and that sort of thing and put you on the list to get into the shop and get it fixed, that's a week where you're stuck somewhere. So it's either figure out how to stay in the van for that week, like in the parking lot. I just had to do that. I broke down in California and luckily was able to get it fixed in like 24 hours. but I had to get loaded onto the back of a tow truck, and I couldn't, because the tow truck was so tall, there was no way I was going to transfer into it. And the guy was really cool and was like, don't say anything, but I'll let you stay in your van and just put your seatbelt on and just chill. And I was like, cool. And he dropped me off, and I slept in the parking lot of the auto repair shop that night and woke up the next morning. And thankfully they were able to get me up and rolling again. But it definitely comes with some anxiety, you know. And so to lead into what you're saying, being prepared is important, but you can only be so prepared. So there's always an element of trusting the process. Like what you said, like if something happens, you'll just figure it out. You know, there are people around. We don't, you know, even if we're in really rural areas, like I live in a pretty rural area. So getting out of my hometown to go to like Southern California, there's a lot of open space I drive through where I kind of feel alone on the road. But you're not completely alone. Like that road's there for a reason. I'm not the only one driving. You might be there for a little while, but you're not going to live there. You know, like somebody's going to pass at some point and be able to help you out. So no, I can't change a flat tire on my own. Certain mechanical issues are going to happen. You can't fix on the side of the road. You're going to have to call a tow truck, whatever. That's just a part of it. But you can be prepared with certain things that can get you out of certain situations. So like I have a tow rope, you know, to be able to hook into if I were to get stuck somewhere where somebody, you know, could, if a truck drove by, I could hook onto their truck and they could pull me out. So if it was snowing or something and I got, you know, stuck in the snow, I could get some help. I have all the, you know, the cables to, you know, jumpstart my car if my battery dies. I've got a toolbox full of tools to where for little things here and there, like I can work on them. I've got, outside of fixing the mechanical side of things, you know, you got to think about the other side. Like, what happens if you break down on the side of the road and it's 8 o'clock at night and your van's not working, so your heat's not working, and it's really cold outside? Well, what do you have to stay warm overnight? Because as a wheelchair user, like depending on where I break down, I might not even be able to get out of the van. Like that might not be an option. If it's really cold, the safer option overnight would be stay in the van, obviously. So I've got a little Mr. Buddy heater in there with little green propane tanks I can hook onto it to create some heat inside the van. That's really helpful. Even in the middle of the summer, I always travel, even if I won't even need it most of the time, but I always travel with a really warm sleeping bag. So that's in there. I've got other smaller things like the little emergency blankets, you know, the little like tinfoil looking blankets that you could put on. Like those extra layers will help, especially on the inside of a sleeping bag or something if you were stuck there for a while. My level of spinal cord injury, it's really hard for me to maintain my body temperature, and I get cold very easy. So I got to think about these things. I've got some heated gloves, electric gloves. They're really nice to just help keep my hands warm. Like having a heat source is really important for me to be able to stay warm. And if I allow myself to get really cold, it's really hard to warm up unless I have a heat source. So not to mention I've got a cook stove in there. I've always got more than enough water. So I could boil some water and put it in an Nalgene and hug that Nalgene, you know, in my sleeping bag at night to stay warm. There's little things that I can do, even though I don't have like heat overnight in the van. There's things I can do to stay warm, and I'm prepared for that. I did a trip, kind of my scariest trip was I was driving, this is over Christmas a handful of years ago, and I was driving from Jackson, Wyoming to my hometown in Minnesota to visit family for the holidays. And this pretty big storm was moving over, and I was like, it'll be fine. You know, I played that game, which was really dumb. And I started driving out of Jackson and hit this massive storm. Like I'm barely out of town. And I'm like, this is, I don't know if I should drive through this, but it'll get better is what I kept telling myself. Well, I went over this massive mountain pass, and it was gnarly, like super sketchy for me to be out there. And I got to the other side, and the van broke down. And it's like negative 20 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but really cold, below zero. And I was like, you know, what am I going to do now? It's freezing cold. It's a blizzard outside. Here I am in this front wheel drive van. Thankfully, it would still move, but it went into like limp mode, so it wouldn't go more than like 20 miles an hour. And I made it however many miles to the closest town. Got to that town, got a few things figured out, found a dealership that was like 20 miles away, and found a hotel really close to me, got in that hotel that night. Woke up the next morning, it was negative 37 degrees. Like, my van barely started. I didn't think it was going to start. And got into it, drove to the dealership. It ended up just being a sensor. They got some ice covered up on it because of the blizzard and how cold it was and everything, but they got it sorted. Got back in the van. The whole time I'm sitting there thinking, it's negative 37 degrees. I got this Mr. Buddy heater, but this isn't going to do anything for me in this kind of cold. Like, I'm actually scared at this point. But I get the van up and rolling, and then I'm kind of like a little bit stubborn, and I was like, cool, keep going to Minnesota. Well, as I was driving, I got up to South Dakota, and they closed the entire interstate from South Dakota all the way through to Minnesota because of this crazy storm. So I got stuck in a hotel for a few nights, stayed in that hotel for a few nights, then got on the road the next day and was driving. It was still freezing cold. And what was wild is I only have heat in the very front of the van, like what the engine will pump out. But at the floor, it was really cold. Even with the heat blasting, it wasn't keeping things warm. So I had curtains behind me, dividing the rear of the van in the front to try to keep that little cab area warm. I had my dog on the passenger seat, and I had blankets and stuff on him to keep him warm. But I had a jug of water on the floor right next to the driver's seat. That was freezing. Like, it was literally turning to ice. That's how cold it was outside and how cold the van was staying the whole time. So as I'm driving through South Dakota, I'm totally nervous the whole time. So I'm like, if I break down here, I'm seeing broke down trucks everywhere from the storm. Dead animals, dead cows, and dead pheasants along the highway. Like, the storm was proper gnarly. And I made it all the way to Minnesota and kind of had like, took a big breath and was like, that was so stupid. I should have stayed home. Like, why did I do that? So the whole drive back, if you want to talk about a level of anxiety that I haven't really felt too much in my life, because I'm usually a pretty calm and collected guy, I was filled with anxiety the entire way home because the check engine light came back on my van. It was still cold out. I had this whole like nightmare of a story getting to Minnesota, so I was expecting the worst of the worst. And yeah, so it's like, that's where I think being prepared as much as you can be is really important, but also making better decisions. Like, that decision I made was stupid just to go see my family. Like, that could have easily gone a different route. And when you're in temperatures that cold, like, that could get really bad really fast. And I should have stayed home. So I think that's the other part of it is, like, you got to trust the process a little bit, but also, like, make smart decisions. Like, think it through. Is it really worth it? When you're driving across the country and you encounter weather or whatever. So, yeah, you can be as prepared as you want, but there's always some unknowns. There's no doubt to that.
Yeah, no, you can be, the best prepared for your trip, and something can go wrong and you can be thrown sideways.
Yeah, but you do, like, that's the fun of it, and probably there's like Instagram makes living on the road look really sexy.
Yeah.
It's not always, right?
Not at all.
And so, like, that story I just told was not a sexy moment. When you break down and you're having to deal with that and you're in your rig that you live in, that's not a sexy moment, living in the back of auto repair shops while you're getting your van worked on, that's not a sexy moment. Sleeping in truck stops, where are you going to go to the bathroom? Like, I have a little commode setup that I use in my air, and I go to the bathroom in a trash bag and I throw that away when I'm traveling. But, like, that's not sexy. There's nothing fun about that. And, like, so there's just a lot of pieces to it that's like, you have to recognize this isn't going to be as comfortable as being at home, no matter how well you have the van or whatever the rig is built out. And trusting the process and trusting other humans. There's a lot of really kind humans out there that are so down to help out, but you just got to trust that process and really be comfortable asking for help, be comfortable talking to strangers, be comfortable making decisions. All of those. I mean, you'll learn a lot about yourself on the road if you're traveling solo, because if you got to deal with it all on your own, meaning you asking for help and all of that, not necessarily doing it independently. Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself, but you also learn a lot about how awesome humans can be. So I've had some people really step up and help me out, and it's just been like, you become really grateful for the fact that there are people out there that care and that are willing to help and that are the helpers of the world. Because they're everywhere. And that's also the other part. Like, because of course that one winter story I just told is like the most extreme, but I've had all kinds of other different moments, little things. My wheelchair rolled away from the van. I didn't have it locked and it like went too far away and then I couldn't get it. You know what I mean? Like all those little things happen a lot. And there's just like really great people in the world that are willing to help. Going to a laundromat. Oh my gosh, all the lower dryers are being used right now, and all there is taller ones, but I can't really get into those because I use a wheelchair. There's people that'll help. You just got to look around and ask. Like, there's tons of great people in the world, and so that was my biggest fear. Was when I first started was like, what happens if I break down? What happens when this happens? All these bigger ideas. I didn't even think about all the little day-to-day things that happen where you got to ask for help here and there, and I've broke down a few times on the road, and I've needed help in the laundromats, or I've needed help, really bad winter storms going through, and it's tough for me to get out and fill up my gas, but there's someone else filling up theirs, and I roll down to my window. Hey, could you help me out? Like, I use a wheelchair. Could you just help me fill my gas tank up? People are psyched to help out, and so that's what really made it to where it's like now traveling on the road. I don't really think about it too much because it's going to work out one way or another. You're not gonna just be stuck somewhere forever. Like people will be around to help you out.
Heck yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And it really is like it's a really good way to connect with like new places, people, and have remarkable experiences.
Oh, dude, I mean the story. I should have kept a journal when I lived on the road. I should have kept a journal of just the people I met, the strangers.
Yeah.
It was endless. It was just. I think that's the coolest part is when you go out there, especially when you do it alone. When you travel alone, it's much different than when you're traveling with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And when you travel alone, especially when you don't necessarily have like when I was living on the road, it wasn't like every day was as like I had this plan of these sites I was going to see and this and that, and this trail I'm going to go on. There was a lot of like unplanned activities happening, which just put me in all these unique situations or these little towns, and you find these little restaurants and you start talking to the servers and just like, or you meet people in there, someone else that's like eating alone, or whatever. Like you end up, when you're doing it alone, you end up in situations that you would never end up in, or meeting people you would never meet if it wasn't for the fact that you were alone. Because when you're with somebody else, you're kind of in your own bubble at that point. And when you're traveling alone, you just end up, and you're also on your own time. So if you end up in a conversation with somebody and be like, yeah, I'll sit here. This conversation's great. I'll keep this conversation going with this person. But you also end up in scary moments, dude. I had one time when I was traveling out in my Subaru, and I pulled over to a rest stop. This was again in the middle of South Dakota. Maybe it was in North Dakota, one or the other. But I was driving from Montana to Minnesota, and I was tired. I needed to take a nap, and so I pulled over in this rest stop. Bunch of people there. Crawl in the back, took a little nap, woke up half hour later, started making some lunch. But when I got out of the van or out of the Subaru to make some lunch, the whole parking lot was empty, but there was one guy there doing work, like underneath his car, like working on it, changing the oil or something. I don't know what he's doing, but it kind of like made the hairs on my neck raise. It says in the middle of nowhere. I'm very aware that I'm vulnerable as a wheelchair user, whether I like it or not. It is a thing, and I was like, there's something about this doesn't feel right. I had not my service dog I have now, but I had a different dog then. And it was pretty wild. So all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make this little like sandwich and then I'm going to eat it on the road. I just need to make it real quick and then get on the road. So I'm making it. And all of a sudden that guy comes walking up to me and he's like standing really close to me. There's nobody around. I am in the middle of nowhere. And it was really uncomfortable. I could sense that this wasn't going to go a good direction. My dog was off in the grass, just sniffing around, doing his dog thing. Happened to be always paying attention. So he came over and he got in between me and that guy and sat down and just stared at the guy. And the guy looked at me and goes, this dog helps you with everything, huh? And I was like, yeah, he's got my back 100%. Best dog ever. And he was like, all right, well, you have a good day. And he just walked away. But he was not that was like cut short by the dog. That wasn't like the conversation was almost over and he was going to leave and it was coincidence the dog came over. Dog came over, he stopped his conversation and he left. Anyway, I got in the Subaru and started driving, and I remember getting back on the highway, and my dog came up and put his head on my shoulder right after that, like rested his chin on my shoulder from behind me, and I just grabbed on his head, and I teared up because I was like, dude, you're my best friend. Like, you got my back no matter what. Like, that was scary. So you got to keep your wits about yourself too. Like on the road, like you're encountering a lot of really beautiful people, and it's worth having that trust and trust in the process. But also, like, yeah, weird stuff can happen too. And you want to be smart. You want to, if something doesn't feel right or feel comfortable, get yourself out of the situation. I always park my van in a way where I can either back up or go forward. So if all I can do is back up to get out of a spot, somebody could park right behind me and block me in. And who knows what the situation could be from there. So I always want two options to be able to go forward or backwards to get out if I'm going to sleep somewhere. So I think about those things now because I've had weird moments where, thankfully nothing's ever happened, but I've had weird moments that have maybe, try to be a little bit smarter about how I position myself in the world when I'm traveling.
That's interesting. The parking thing. I never really thought about that. Something because I parked in a lot of places on my way down in the Baja where, thinking back, I probably shouldn't have parked there. I made myself an easy target for, getting robbed if anyone wanted to. But I just want to ask, like, you're talking about your service dog. How else does your service dog help you with van life and like traveling on the road?
Yeah, both service dogs that I've had, my current one and the one before, they did two things for me. It would pull me and they would pick stuff up for me. So if I drop my keys or something, they'd grab them and put the keys in my lap, or I could grab onto their harness or their collar and they could pull me around. So those are like the two main roles as a service dog, and that would help a lot. Sometimes, I've been in situations where I've dropped my keys. Let's just say I got up into the van and then I fumbled my keys and they fell out the side door, and the only way to get them is to get off my wheelchair onto the floor of the van and put my wheelchair back on the ground and get over to my wheelchair to get the keys. And I can point to the keys and my dog will jump down and grab the keys and bring them back up into the van. So there's little things like that that are massive in those moments, right? That are super helpful. So the service dog side of things is the pulling and the picking stuff up. But then there's this other part that doesn't really qualify him as a service dog, but it is super comforting for me, which is no one's coming into that van in the middle of the night with the way my dog will bark if someone tried to get into the van. And that allows me to sleep really well. So my last dog, I remember, because when I was first traveling on the road, it was all out of a Subaru. I did that for like a year and a half, 2 years maybe, before I got a different rig. And so I'd go on these trips and I'd sleep in the back of the Subaru, and I always felt super vulnerable, especially because there's all the windows on the Subaru so people can look in. I made blinds through the windows and stuff like that. But I remember once I slept in the back of a hotel, and I woke up to people leaving the hotel to get out to their cars in the middle of the night, and they weren't threatening at all or anything like that. But I remember going to sleep being like, oh, I always feel so vulnerable. I'm kind of scared. This is kind of nerve-wracking. And then I woke up to these people that were talking, and I looked, and my dog just had its head up already. It was just paying attention. And I was like, oh, I can rest easy with this dog because they're 100% always on. So cool. That allowed me to go to sleep at night knowing if something is going on, the dog's going to let me know. Right. And so they'll be aware of it way quicker than I will. So I can rest easy just knowing that. So that part of it, traveling with the dog really opens that door for me to just feel more comfortable. I've had enough moments where either the dog made a bunch of noise by barking, or that story I just told at the rest stop where the guy walked up to me in the middle of nowhere, and a bunch of things in between all of that has just really made me appreciate the loyalty of a dog, but then also the help that a properly trained service dog can provide.
It's cool that you have a service dog. I don't see a lot of people in wheelchairs with service dogs. Is Is a service dog something that you'd recommend other people with a similar injury?
I think it really just depends on the person. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with having a dog in general, but a service dog especially. So there's constant training that has to happen. Like that doesn't just end. You have to always. Sometimes I just have my dog pick stuff up for me, even if I don't need help, just to keep them in the groove of helping out and knowing what the commands are. Um, it's not. In some ways, it makes life easier. Like when I said, like if I dropped my keys out of my van, my dog could get out and grab them. But in other ways, it makes life harder. You got to bring enough food for them. You got to think about them the whole time. When do they need to go outside to go to the bathroom? Have they been walked for the day? Are they getting exercise? All these other things. So you got to want to have a dog first. You got to want to have a dog and want to take care of a dog. And that to me comes with a massive responsibility. So if you're not willing to sacrifice part of your own life for them, then I don't think you should have a dog in general, let alone a service dog. And if you think a service dog could help you out and you're willing to sacrifice part of your life for that animal, then yeah, they're awesome. I mean, they're great to have around. They're awesome companions. They help me out a ton. Like if I'm in the airport and my dog's pulling me when I got luggage on my lap and all, oh my gosh, like that's like a massive help. There's this partnership and this relationship that's created where he's helping me and working, but also is just my dog and he's just my buddy, and he's just super loyal. And that's just a really special relationship. But if you're not willing to sacrifice a good chunk of your own life to take care of that animal, yeah, don't get a dog. Yeah, don't. There's nothing worse than when people get dogs and they don't really give them the love and support and time that they need. So yeah, my dog eats up a lot of my time every single day. I love it. For me, I think it's awesome. But if you're not willing to do that, no way. They're more work.
Oh, certainly. I know. I have a
Yeah.
dog, and I can attest to that 100%.
Yeah. Just the food alone. I hit the road for a month recently, and I have to cook. My dog's got some hip issues and some allergies to certain things and all that. So he comes with some extra special needs in his diet, and so we cook half of his food. But it was like, okay, how am I going to cook and hold on to and keep frozen a month's worth of food for him for half his food? The other's kibble. But how am I going to do that? And that was not super easy. And it took up a lot of room in the van to have like an extra cooler for all all his food that we had packed up. So like that kind of stuff you have to think about, like if all you're doing is giving your dog dry kibble, then it's a lot easier, but you don't have to bring as much. But that was just enough. It's like, oh my gosh, a month. How am I going to do this? I have no idea. Yeah. So I've had people help cook food for him, when I was out in New Jersey working for a couple weeks, and you just got to figure it out. But it eats up a large chunk of your brain and time.
Yeah. So does your dog limit the amount of time that you're able to spend on the road?
No, I just figured it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Like when I was in New Jersey for a couple weeks doing some trail work, I asked the lady that we were working with, she was super nice, if I could come over to her house and like cook some food. And she was like the nicest person in the world and was just like, just tell me what it is. I'll just get it. I'll throw it in a crock pot and cook it all. I'll bring it to you tomorrow. And she just made it for me. But I mean, that's like the trust the process and trust people around you kind of side of things of living on the road. There's just so many great people out there. You'll figure it out. There's an answer to all the problems. There's a solution to everything. So it's like you just got to trust that. And so you might be in a moment and then it's like, okay, don't get too narrow in your sight. Like keep your eyes open and figure out the solutions to try to, what's your plan A, B, C to try to figure out whatever problem you're in, whether that's, cooking food for your dog or your vehicle broke down or you're just trying to find places to recreate and you're by yourself and you got to find people to help you out, whatever. Like there's ways to make it all happen. No question.
Totally. Traveling on the road is a constant, it's constantly problem solving. That's what you're doing all the time. You're problem solving.
I mean, it's like everything too. It's like, where are you going to get gas? I got to get an oil change because I've been on the road for a long time. Grocery stores, laundromats, like all the things that's like just in your home normally that's like really easy to make happen. is like more work. Okay, how much water do I have? Where am I going to fill my water tank up? Like what? Like you're constantly trying to figure out that stuff. I think that's the part that people don't really think about when they think about living on the road is the amount of work that goes into just the day-to-day tasks to stay alive. Water, food, laundry, cleaning, gas for your vehicle. Like that alone is like takes up a lot of your time. Because to
Yep.
do laundry, you have to go to a laundromat and you got to hang out at that laundromat to get all that done. It's not just like throw clothes in the laundry at your home and then go do other things while your clothes are being cleaned. So everything takes forever. So I found that like doing that kind of stuff on the days where it was bad weather was for me good. Like if I couldn't fly, it was like, hey, I can't fly. So I'm going to go out, do all that while I was at the laundromat. They almost all have Wi-Fi. So I get on Wi-Fi and I do some work on the computer, that sort of thing. Like I found ways to make it flow, but it takes time to figure that out. And it takes a lot more time to take care of the day-to-day than it does. I mean, a shower, if you don't have a shower in your rig, like that's a whole event in itself to like go to a gym and take a shower inside of it as a person with a disability. Like it just takes a while. So, yeah, but it's totally worth it. I don't want to make it sound negative. Like it's awesome living on the road.
It's important to talk about the practicality of it. And like we were talking about earlier, Instagram highlights all the best moments, but it doesn't show the hard moments and the tough situations that you have to persevere through.
Yeah.
Right? So it's important for people to know. And kind of leaning into that, leaning into a question I'd like to ask for people that are thinking about doing van life with a similar injury as you, or just a person with a disability in general, like where should they start and what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, start simple. Start really simple. Do a weekend trip. Figure it out. Do a series of weekend trips and slowly figure out, how to make whatever it is you have to travel in work. What size, like when I did it in my Subaru, it was like the way I had to do it was significantly different than the way I do it with my van now, which is significantly different than the way I did it with my camper. So start small, put yourself in situations where you can go test it out, camp at a campground, for example, but be close enough to home to where you can hit the exit button and like get yourself out of the situation if it's not working out. So then from those little small trips, that'll build up and create these moments to be able to, go on bigger trips and that sort of thing. In the beginning, I did it always. I had somebody on the other end of the road trip that I knew. So there might be a day or two in between where I'd be totally solo. But I knew once I arrived to that destination, I had a good friend there that could help me out. That was really helpful in the beginning, just even in my own mind, to just know like, okay, I just got to get from point A to point B, one overnight by myself, manage all of that. That was scary in the beginning. And like the first time I did that, I think it was like 2.5 years out from my injury, so it was like, that was a really big deal. The first time I took my Subaru, it was a 1-day drive. Like I got there the same day, but just driving that far, I think it was like an 8 or 9 hour drive. Driving that far by myself was really scary in the beginning, but I had a good friend on the other end. That was super helpful for only my peace of mind, but also I needed help on the other end. I didn't have everything else figured out. So just start small. Like, if you're still working on your own personal independence, like if you're new to your disability or something like that, like you got to start small so you can problem solve through all of this. Like now I've been living as a wheelchair user, as a quadriplegic for 5 years or 15 years. Like I kind of just know what I'm capable of and how to approach things, how to transfer onto different things. You don't know that in the beginning, and same thing goes for if you've never done solo road trips. There's so much you don't even know that you don't know. So just start small. Do a weekend trip, do one overnight, and figure out how it works. It'll be really hard, and you'll figure out ways to make it easier. And that'll just build. It'll grow on that, and your confidence will grow. And your anxiety will go down. Your fear will disappear.
Love it. So for a person like yourself who has done some bigger road trips and you have the confidence, can you maybe talk a little bit about, I don't know, future plans? Do you have any big adventures planned? Would you like to go like down into Central or South America or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I go to Colombia every year.
But would you drive there?
I don't know that I would drive to Colombia, although that would be really nice to have, like once you're there, to be able to have a vehicle to drive around. But no, I fly to Colombia, and then we do a bunch of paragliding there. But a lot of the same rules apply. Like you gotta, I think learning, especially if you're a person that deals with like pressure sores and that kind of stuff, like sitting on a plane for a long time, traveling through the airports, making decisions on your own through that process, especially when there's language barriers. Um, there's always problem solving. Getting to wherever you're staying, especially in a country like Colombia, like it might not be very accessible. So how are you going to do that? You know, jumping straight into that and making that your first travel as a wheelchair user might be a lot to bite off. But that's why I said earlier, like start small because you'll build the skills that'll lead into all these other things. So like going to Colombia now for me is like nothing. Like I don't think twice about it. It's not scary at all. As far as plans, like with the van, I mean, I travel for work in it quite a bit throughout the year. So like that's always a thing. Like we're working on the dates right now, but sometime into February and then towards the end of March is two separate trips that I'll be doing. That'll take me one to Colorado and the other to New Mexico. So I'll drive my van and sleep in the van probably for a good chunk of that. Thankfully, like those kind of things, I'm working, so I'll get a hotel while I'm there. But so I'm always doing that. Probably plan a trip to Southern California here. Go take a buddy that's new to paragliding, is trying to like spread his wings out a little bit more. He's not quite ready for Colombia, but he wants to be for the following year. So we're thinking about doing a trip later in the winter to like go down to California where it's warm and get him some mountain flying and that sort of stuff. So that'll be camping in the van. It's all like, I don't have a ton of like these like grand trips planned anymore. Like it's just my lifestyle now. So I'm on the road a lot. Like it just is what it is. My wife and I are probably going to drive up to Montana in a couple weekends and go up there and hang out with some friends and all these little road trips. That's just how we live and how we travel. Yeah, it's kind of weird when in the beginning it seems like you have to plan these like grand adventures, and then after a while it kind of just turns into a lifestyle, and it's just how you navigate the world. It's just not so much like this whole, which is like kind of takes some of the fun away because everything in the beginning when it's new is like mind blowing. My first solo road trip that I talked about, like going down to California and driving up Highway 1 with my little camper. And I mean, my mind was blown with what I was seeing, for one, because it was a part of the world I'd never been to, but also the fact that I was doing it independently and doing it on my own and managing it pretty well. Like I was like, for so many reasons, my heart was so full. And now that's like just kind of common. I don't have that same feeling that you did like when it was first, you know? And so, again, that's not to make it sound negative. It just changes. In the beginning, it's just like your mind's opening up to this whole world of things that are now new possibilities.
Yeah.
And that's a super exciting time. So if you're somebody that wants to get into it and wants to travel around more on the road and wants to maybe explore the van life side of things a little bit, yeah, don't let anything hold you back from it. It's the whole learning process is super fun. And it's all these little breakthroughs that are like massive at the time. And it's just really an exciting journey to go down to discover like what you can do on your own and how you can travel around and explore the world. You know, it's awesome. It's super great. A lot of freedom.
Yeah. I can't agree more. Yeah, it was really enlightening and eye-opening when I drove down to the Baja and realizing that even though I have a disability that prevents me from, or not prevents me, kind of, hinders the way I do things, that I was still able to go off on this big epic adventure and, make it happen when there were people that doubted that I was going to be able to do it. So showing them was kind of like, hell yeah, I did this.
Yeah, and that I'm sure that sticks with you. You know, that trip will always stand out as like a trip that really helped shape your life. Like I've got those in my memory bank of just these moments that just really helped shape who I am. And that's the like challenging moments of problem solving and figuring things out. and the awesome moments where you just get to celebrate what you're doing. Yeah, your Baja trip sounds like kind of like my California trip where I went up Highway 1, where I was just like, I did that. Like, holy cow, I did that. And that worked, surprisingly. I can't believe it. And I made it home. Like, amazing. What more can I do? Like, now that I know that, like, what more can I do? Now it's like you start to realize how much you don't know about yourself.
Yeah.
And you learn. I really truly feel we learn our best lessons solo. Like that's you have to get in there and get your hands dirty, and it's hard to learn that through other people. Like I could give you every bit of tips and information and all of my stories all day long, but they're not really going to help teach you what's going on until you get out there and do it yourself.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, everyone else or each person is different from the other, right? And they're going to need different things, and yeah, the way they operate is going to be different, and yeah, they can only learn from, going out on the road by themselves and doing a solo adventure, whether it's a little day trip, weekend trip, or I don't know, driving across the country.
Yeah, you find yourself in a lot of ways. It's special, really special.
Cool. Well, I know that you have a hard stop time coming up here pretty quick, Joe. I feel like we had a good conversation and we talked about a lot of cool things, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. It's great to be able to share this. I don't think we talk enough about like traveling with a disability, like the things we got to manage: bathrooms, pressure sores, medications, whatever. Like there's a way to do it. And I think people with disabilities fear travel, whether it's by airplane, the road trip, whatever. They just fear it a lot because there's a lot of unknowns, and we have inherently more things that could go wrong. But there's I've done it so much now that's just made me realize, like now it just feels normal for me to travel and I just problem solve about it. And I hope that, if anyone takes anything away from this, it's that they can get out and do it too. It's just, you gotta just start trying, figure it out. But traveling with a disability is tough, but it is magical. And I think with that toughness, like makes it that much more magical. So you'll have these moments that a lot of other people won't experience because you might have doubts within yourself, lack of confidence with yourself, or we'll get through moments that you didn't think you could get through on your own before you got into that moment. So yeah, hopefully more people get out there and do it. It's an amazing way. On the road is just such an amazing way to get out and explore.
It really is. You just got to push through that fear and just give her. Cool. Well, again, Joe, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'd be excited to chat with you more in the future. Let's keep the ball rolling.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely have some more conversations in the future.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks a lot. Have a great one.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.